Peyton, welcome to Where the Climate Things Are. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. Here we are.
We made it. We've really, this one, I feel like we had to schedule. It's hard to schedule in the summer months, I feel like. But then, of course, as you know, I'll share with the audience that yesterday my power went out as we were about to hop on to record. So it was like, really, we've it's been kind of against all odds that we're here.
Yeah, but we made it, and we're very fortuitous.
Very excited. This is also really fun because this is the second interview we've done together, or this is the second time I've interviewed you. So the first time was on the Trailhead podcast with Faith. And I was saying to you before we started recording, it's very true. Like, you were one of the conversations on the Trailhead that, like, as a newer to the environmental movement person myself, I was like, oh, there's something here where there's so many folks in the outdoor recreation community broadly that work on climate and environment. And what a cool, like in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, what a cool series that would be, like really delving into the environmental side. So here we are. This is what this is. And I'm so excited to come back around. And also, you've done so many cool things over the past few years that I'm like excited to catch up with you on and have future career trajectories ahead of you that are exciting too. So really excited to chat.
Likewise. Sure. I feel very, I don't know, like I'm awkward. So I'm not good.
No, you're the best. I love just chatting and giggling. It's the best. Okay, so in a very informal way, I was wondering if you could introduce yourself to the listeners in whatever way you want to take that.
Thanks.
Oh, also we have a cat friend with us too. Yes. Perfect.
Can you see her tail? Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Oh, she's going down. I'll let her. Okay.
She's, as I said, she is invited to be a part of this interview at any point.
Okay, how to introduce myself? Yeah, I am a scientist. I'm a runner. I work on issues related to climate change impacts on fish and other aquatic organisms. I have an interesting relationship. Well, I think it's an interesting relationship with nature, and like how I view the world around me. And I really enjoy community, and I want to continue to do things or surround my life goals with things that really support community, whether that be specifically in the science and research realm or in running or just in life in general. I think it's taken me a long time to realize that I actually do really need different types of community for myself to thrive as a person. And that's ultimately like one of the most important things about being human is like we all really need community in different ways. And so yeah, I think I try to find ways to blend that in a lot of facets of my life. If that makes sense for an intro.
It does. It does. No, and we were just talking too before we hit record that you're learning French this year, living in Quebec, and you've also, I think it sounded like you have Spanish, or you've learned Spanish, and you have that to some extent in your life. And like, I think I just thought it was really interesting to hear you talk about like the communities that you want to work with. And like the language is a piece to do that, right? Like is a bridge. And that's so cool that you have that North Star. Cause I feel like with learning languages, like, I don't know. I remember our mutual friend Sasha and I were talking about like, we both have to learn French this year. So when we go to Chamonix, we can like order things. And that was a great North Star for a second, but like totally I fell off. Actually, Sasha continued, I think. So shout out. But nice. I really felt like when you just said that, it was sort of this like aha moment for me of like, oh my gosh, what an interesting, like how to kind of stick with something like a language learning journey to really have that end goal of working with different communities?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been, originally for myself, before even starting this work in Quebec, I didn't really know. Well, I didn't know French at all, and I didn't really have an interest necessarily in learning it until I started thinking about the kind of research and career and like life trajectory that I want for myself. And a lot of that really involves being able to communicate and have other types of community with other like black diasporic people around the world, and just knowing the process of colonization especially with language and how that really inhibits our access to different people and like people that look like me. I was like, okay, if I'm going to do this work in Quebec, then at least that's a really great way for me to start to build this other aspect of community for myself and give myself a way to access other people. So it's been kind of a newer thing for me, because before that, I was like, why do I need to learn French? Why are people so obsessed with learning this language?
You're like, it's really hard. I don't understand.
It's so hard. And I'm like, I love Spanish. I'm comfortable there. I can stay there. But it's actually been really cool, and also been really cool to also convene with other people that are trying to learn the language as well. Because I've been taking a course through the Quebec government, which has been a whole other way of like accessing community for myself here from people all over.
Wow.
Which is really cool. And like people from the Philippines and from all over South America and from Iran and Lebanon, like all these places. You're like, okay, yeah, we're all here just to be able to like exist in this new place and find a sense of community, find a sense of home and place. But in the process, you also get to just like experience other parts of the world and see what other people's experiences are like. So yeah, it's been really awesome. Yeah. And I've gotten a glimpse of, being able to like really start to have this sense of community and engagement with people from French speaking African countries as well since being here. So it's been really cool. Like, I'm like, okay, my goals are coming slowly because I'm still really bad at speaking, but it's like, it is really nice to have that goal for myself. And it's like a good way to remind myself that like, even if I'm failing one day, eventually I will be good enough to have like full on, like really meaningful conversations with people and like actually do the type of work that I want to do. Which is use aquatic research to support communities and their efforts for environmental protection, restoring fisheries, restoring aquatic ecosystems, and like Indigenous community sovereignty is really the big thing that I'm really interested in. But yeah, so this is just like one small step of the process, and it's very humbling.
No, it's so cool what you're doing, seriously. And like the way that you have that more of that like sense of who you want to work with and what your goals are, like, oh man, I'm so happy for you. I know it's also like probably feels really hard most days to be like, French is hard. I remember I worked with a guy from Brazil, and he said, Addie, I'm not funny in English. I'm really funny in Portuguese. I'm not funny in English. And it was so interesting because I was like, well, I think you're funny. And he was like, no, like, you don't have to say that. Like, I mean it. Like, there's a different like humor, timing, right? And same, like, I think language acquisition, we could do like an entire other podcast on this. Cause like I learned Spanish through immersion. Like I didn't take Spanish class. I took French class, but I learned Spanish through immersion. And to say learned is like loose. Like my level now is like not very, but it was interesting to like do those two parallel processes of like two different languages. One was like very formalized in a classroom setting. but never used. And then one was like through immersion, like I'm at the dinner table with a dictionary kind of situation with like a family. And yeah, like that one stuck way more. It's because I was using it a lot more, but I also have like terrible grammar, terrible, like it's more just like to get by, to like literally ask for certain food or, you know, order something or whatever. You sort of have like a different, I read something about this where it was like a fight or flight or there's something that happens in the brain. Maybe it's slightly different, but it's like with language where your brain like goes into survival mode to be like, well, I have to at least be able to ask for like food and a bed and like the basic necessity, you know what I mean? And you sort of like trick your brain into, I don't know, like surviving through language. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty
language is like a whole other lens of experiencing the world, because not all languages are the same or have the same words for everything.
Right.
And so it totally changes the way you view, or you're like constantly shifting how you speak about certain things because you don't have access to maybe all the words that you want to use to describe what you're trying to describe.
Yeah.
And like totally changes how you engage with people. It can make it, I'm like, I totally understand not being funny.
Yeah.
I don't have the words to describe what I'm trying to say in this moment. So it's like this limited vocabulary and you can't like fully express yourself. So I totally
so I thought that was so interesting. But anyways, we'll get to like what you're doing now, because you have had such a cool, like, since I've seen you in the past few years, but I feel like since we had our first interview moment a couple of years ago, you've done so many cool things. So we'll get there. But I was curious to ask, so one of the questions similar to like how Faith and I asked folks, like, what does playing outside mean to you on the trail ahead? My kind of opening question here on this podcast is, what was your aha moment on climate? And I'm very interested to ask you this because you are now like a scientist, very, very advanced in your biologist career, science career. And I'm just so curious, like and it could be aha moment on environment, but like what kind of like awoke you to this world that you then went to pursue?
That's a great question. I don't really know if it was necessarily one particular moment, but it was a series of events, because I've always been someone who like really enjoyed being outdoors and like in nature. Like I just wanted to exist in water, like just getting really dirty. And I always had questions and curiosities about different organisms and everything. But in terms of climate and environmental issues as a whole, I think a lot of that framing, or like reasons why I particularly wanted to be involved, came from a lot of things that I was seeing when I was growing up. Because I grew up in Atlanta, and I grew up in a northern suburb of the city. And so in a way I was like kind of sheltered a bit from a lot of the very blatant inequalities and inequities that exist everywhere, but particularly in Atlanta. And I grew up in a primarily white neighborhood, and my upbringing was very much like lower middle class, pretty basic, but I was very fortunate. And I grew up around all this nature, all this ability to have access to a lot of spaces that a lot of other Black people in the city did not have access to. And so I could tell very much growing up that my experience was pretty different from a lot of people. And the further in I got into biological sciences in my coursework, but also particularly environmental science classes, the more I was interested in understanding some of the issues going on specifically in Atlanta. And like there's this river, for example, that I'd run because there's like a big trail system that goes along the Chattahoochee River that I grew up near. And I'd run there like every weekend with my cross country team in high school. And like there are moments when you notice that the river is high or low or like more polluted or things like that. And I had a lot of questions about that particular issue and was really curious and just started getting more activated locally. And that led me to this organization that was doing a lot of work around the city as a whole. And it was like a lot of canvassing and talking about some of these inequalities throughout the city. And like particularly like the southern part of Atlanta is considered more Black, has a lot of that racial divide and redlining process. So a lot of people in southern Atlanta don't have the same access to these forests, to these trail systems. It's like very industrial. Not the same level of environmental engagement that I was able to have growing up. And so a lot of the canvassing that was going on with this group was talking about these inequalities and a lot of the pollution that was happening in the southern part of the city. And I was like so invigorated by that and wanted to continue to do more for myself to like advocate for a lot of people that look like me. Also because I just felt this general disconnect with the Black community as a whole, especially growing up in a primarily white area. So a lot of that really frames like how I view, like sometimes I think my interest and connection to the environment also stems from me like wanting to further connect with my own community, and this could be a way to do that. But yeah, it was funny doing the canvassing. It was funny doing the canvassing because it was like in the middle of the city, and I was a pretty sheltered kid, so my parents didn't want me to go down into the city by myself, and which is so like I understand because Atlanta's huge and like a lot of things happen there. But yeah, it was funny. I was like, I'm going there for like literally canvassing, like going door to door to ask people to support these environmental initiatives. I'm not like going out and partying or like staying.
Right. It's like the most like wholesome, you know, true mission that you're on.
Like, I'm trying to tell them not to cut trees down.
Right. You're like, guys, I'm, you know, this is like a good thing. I promise.
Yeah. They're like, but no danger. You're going to people's front doors.
I mean, honestly though, like that is real. I was going to say though, like as someone who's also canvassed, sometimes there's moments where you're like, I don't know if I should be on this porch right now.
I agree.
But
it is like that too. But you're just like a gung ho.
Totally.
This is it.
Like I'm doing this for the environment, and why are you worried?
Don't you care?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean that. Wow. Okay. So I think like also hearing you talk about like that access piece. I'm sure we talked about this on the previous episode, but just the way that like even a city is planned, or like certain neighborhoods that have access to green spaces, and even like, you know, like that one part of town is framed by the forest, or, you know, I mean, these kinds of things are so like, I mean, it's kind of obvious at this point. I feel like even you and like we've all talked about this a lot together, but I do feel like there's these, it just shapes us as people. Like it shapes the way that we relate to, like I grew up in Maine, where there's like nature's literally everywhere because it's like such a rural state. But like I didn't like camp a ton. Like everyone kind of assumes that there was this like, I mean, we were somewhat outdoorsy, but then again, that's like me, like my growing up upbringing was probably way more outdoorsy than like the average person in the US, and certainly families, I'm sure, like sort of how you reference like communities of color who like don't have the same levels of access and even like feel safer in the like if I'm in the outdoors, maybe I feel safer than someone who, right. And yet, like, I always am like, oh, yeah, I wasn't, like, I just said it. I was like, oh, it wasn't, like, that outdoorsy. And you're like, it's even just proximity. Like, it's even the fact that you, like, did, like, I don't know, like I'm thinking about like projects we did in school growing up. It's like leaf tracing or like learning the like, you know, it's like things that you're like, wow, nature was so present in a way that like I don't even think I understood. And yet like there's even privilege in that kind of access to conversations or learning education around like, yeah, like tree species or whatever. but yeah, I mean, it's so in a place it's really interesting too in a setting like Atlanta. I don't know enough about the city, but I feel like from what I can tell and what I've heard and the size, right, there's like very different existences that are there, you know, in terms of nature as well.
Yeah. And feeling like you can actually have a connection to it, or like trying to determine what your connection to it is.
Right.
Because you hear like I know a ton of people that have moved to the city, like all over the city, because it's really big, and there are smaller cities that make up the whole city. And yeah, even hearing people's experiences are really, yeah, the city is so green and there's so much like nature around, and it's crazy compared to this other place that I went to. And it's like, yes, but also you're in this very specific part of the city, and it's like you have these trails that you can access, you have this nice green space that doesn't necessarily feel unsafe for you, right? Whereas a lot of people don't have that same experience. Yeah, and I mean, you even see it with the headlines of the like Cop City and the forest protests that have been happening there for a really long time. So I think, yeah, it's all about framing and like really understanding like not everyone's experience is the same. Yeah.
And also like not everyone, I don't know. I feel like not everyone like connects to nature in the same way, or like if you're introduced to it in a way that feels unsafe, then it's like, oh, there's actually like a lot of anxiety and like trauma around those spaces. So I mean, very, very interesting. You also mentioned that you were on a cross country team, but then you like, I will tell the listeners, you like went on to be a very successful runner in addition to your very successful science career. Can you talk a little bit about how like both road running and trail running kind of like came into your life in a bigger way? And then like, this is a big question, but it's like, I'm also curious how your science career was like really growing alongside of those things. I feel like you kind of like grew everything at once. It feels like you're like running really fast trial races on the weekends and like in PhD programs. Like, talk about all that. Cause I feel like you've just had you'll never say it cause it's you and you're extremely humble, but like you're so successful in both of these realms. And I just think that's like a really rare thing. Oh. My God. I don't mean to make you emotional.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I think how road running and trail running came into my life, and like road running and trail running was kind of my way. Like running has always been sort of my way to escape and decompress, and process a lot of things that I experience in my day-to-day life. And I also can be a really competitive person. So it was like naturally that part of my life developed in a way where I can be competitive without being an asshole, I guess. I'm allowed to say asshole on the podcast, or you can.
Yeah, very loud, very loud. Yeah, we welcome all.
Like, I don't know. But also allowed me to like have a little bit of escapism from a lot of things going on in the world, and as a way to help me explore a lot of places. It's been a really wonderful type of movement and like way of just existing in places that I've maybe have been like hundreds of times to places that I am just experiencing for the first time. And there's this experience that my friend Connor, he's an ambassador for Patagonia too. Connor Ryan, he's wonderful, but he has this really beautiful way of describing running that really resonates with me, because he talks about this feedback that your body has with the environment, and like with the plants around you, with the water that's around you, with the trails, like with the plants and the trees. Like, you are having a literal exchange of oxygen, of these molecules, like putting it in a scientific term, but also in this like very real way of like we're interacting with each other in a way that is so visceral in a way, because like running is obviously more energetically taxing than walking or hiking. And so it's just like your body is intimately feeling things so much more, which I think is really beautiful, and is sort of a way that I would describe this, like why I keep enjoying running and why I continue to do it. Because I've definitely had moments, and I'm like honestly currently going through a moment of like trying to understand what my relationship with the sport is.
Totally.
And, especially from a competitive standpoint. But it always goes back to like, I just really enjoy this connection that I can have with spaces, and like feel like I could be out exploring, but it also kind of feels like I'm coming home in a sense. Like I am obviously pretty new to the trail systems here in Quebec, and I live in a small town called Rimouski right now, and there are a ton of local trails, which is really wonderful. And then there are all of these other, like a lot of other trail systems around, and I dabble between going in the city and outside of town to go explore in places, but like there are certain spaces that you just keep going back to because for some reason you feel just like so at home there, and you want to see the changes that are happening there on a day-to-day basis. And so it's like things like that I really love. It's like I can continue to have this intimate connection with this place and learn about it, and like we kind of know each other in a way, and it's really beautiful. And so I think running offers a lot of that to me, and developing this connection with the competitive part of running, as well as just like my experience in nature as a whole, alongside doing a lot of the formative research that I did, especially during my PhD. It's kind of interesting. I think I'm still trying to unpack like I guess why that was all happening at the same time, because my PhD journey was like honestly kind of tumultuous, just because it was also when I experienced like a very real climate fueled disaster in my own life, and like could see the real impacts in my own life. Going back to climate for a second, and it was just like, I think running really provided me a way to process a lot of things that were happening in my PhD journey, in this time where I'm also trying to figure out what my career trajectory is, what I actually want to do as a person in the world, what is my contribution, if I'm going to have a contribution, what would that be? So I think like running helped me process a lot of what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be as a person. I won't say as a scientist, because I think like during that process, it was me trying to figure out if I defined myself as that, or if I wanted to be that, or if I wanted to pursue some other trajectory. Because you go through like a lot of ups and downs, and I think like I'm honestly still going through that.
Totally.
Every day, like, do I want to do this? I don't know. Yeah, is this the best way to spend my time?
Totally and real.
So it's kind of like a cool experience to have where I'm just like constantly questioning myself and why I'm doing the things I'm doing.
Totally.
And yeah, how is it beneficial for me, but also how is it beneficial for the places that I am occupying, and beneficial for the world as a whole, which is like, I mean, I don't know, a big lofty.
It's a lot.
Yourself, but I think I can also be a little dramatic. So
no, we have a very similar brain. I get it. I mean, what you're saying is like very resonant and also a lot. You're like, how do I best serve the planet and like myself and like what is my identity? These are like huge questions. So, and I know you and I even just like on like the sidelines or like moments of passing at races or whatever, I know we've had really interesting conversations about this and like how you define yourself in relation. I mean, like, I'll just share too, like, I'm like barely running right now because I've had years and years of injuries that were like probably related, but unrelated, you know what I mean? And then I've like, basically the most recent one was sort of finding out that I have like I'm wearing down the cartilage in my knees and like I probably can't keep running the same way, right? And it's like you find these things out and I'm realizing as you're speaking, I'm like so resonant to hear about like what like just like what drew me to running in the first place and like why I care about the sport. But I've also had a shift and a reframe of like showing up to these races or events and like still being able to be in the community and feel so like, oh, that's another whole conversation of like it can be a lot, right? It's a scene. It can definitely be a lot, but there's also like some of my best friends are in that community and I'm so grateful for it. And I don't really run with them anymore because I like can't really. So it's sort of, but yeah, anyways, everything you're saying is, I'm like, wow, yes. Like I get the sort of day to day, like, am I doing, like, is this the right way for me? Or like, am I contributing the way I want to contribute? Am I spending my time in this way? And then like, yeah, on top of that, you also had, because the thing that I can't relate to is like my running never got to a level that was like, like anything that was like sponsored or like competitive, which is fine. I mean, like that's completely fine. I'm just more like, you also have that level of like, kind of like thinking through, like, could that be a career path, right? Or like a trajectory. Exactly. And so I think like, that's just always so interesting to me where, I feel like I talk to conversations like this with Dakota or other like, folks in this space who are like always grappling with these things. But I'm also like, but I also don't know what it's like to like have that trajectory be open to me because I think it's something that like, I don't know if I could do that personally, if like I would be fulfilled in that career only, but it's like, you've also like talk about choosing multiple careers or like really padding your life with multiple pursuits. Like, and it's a lot. And I think like, it makes sense that running complemented your PhD journey so much. But it's also, it's hard to do so much at a high level. I feel like.
Yeah. And I had like similar thoughts around whether running would be the main career that I would choose. And I think I just like never conceived of that for myself. Cause like also even though I am pretty competitive and was throughout my college career and high school career, I still like, it's not like I was the best of the best by any means, and still I'm not the best of the best. So it was never like, oh yeah, for sure, 100%. Right. I'm going to be a professional runner and that's it. And that's all I want to do. Which like, it's amazing that people do have that opportunity to do that. And I feel really fortunate that I'm able to have a sponsorship that allows me to seek the competitive things that I want to do and like exist in these different worlds. But I also appreciate that I can also do other things. Like that doesn't have to just be my only career. Cause I honestly don't think I would just be fulfilled by running. I'm like, I get overwhelmed with it all the time, and I'm not even in it full time. Like, I
totally, yes.
It sounds like a lot, but it's amazing that a lot of people can. It's just not my path, and I think I'm still trying to figure out how to blend these worlds together. And I think I'm like finally starting to get there, which is amazing. But I feel really fortunate that I have a sponsor that is also allowing me to talk about these environmental things that I want to talk about and use running as a lens to do that.
Totally.
Yeah. And bring more people in. It feels like it's just like a very sweet thing that I honestly never thought for myself. And I kind of have to remember that on a daily basis too. I'm like, that's right. Not a lot of people get to do this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Peyton. Yes. I literally just had a conversation with my partner, Ryan, about this yesterday, where I was like, I need to like take a breath and be like, all the things that are going on that feel really stressful right now are like incredible. Like someone also was like, if you like, can you imagine telling yourself 3 years ago, you know, the 3 years ago you, like that this was all happening, it'd be like, whoa. But I totally, when you're in it, you're like, oh, it's so much work, or like so stressful.
Yeah, you're like, why
you know?
is everyone asking me to do everything?
Exactly, which is like a very cool place to be objectively. But like, it is a lot. And I'm really, I just was like, I have to bring this memory in, and then we're going to get into more of like your work right now, which is really cool. But I have this wonderful memory that I reference all the time, but I don't even know if I've told you this, of you and Dakota running across No Hands Bridge. Do you know what I'm going to talk about? Okay, this is in Western States 2020. Wait. This is Western States 2023, and Dakota had blown up, and you were running him in as as his pacer. Yeah. And I was actually waiting on No Hands Bridge to film Leah, who was coming in, maybe 10th that year. And I was helping out with like a film production for Faith, actually with Lululemon and da-da-da. And No Hands Bridge, for those that don't know, is lined with like these flags of different countries. I think they're participants in the race. Is that right? Okay. And I just remember like, it's like dark. I see 2 headlamps bobbing along, and I hear who I then realized was your guys' voices, you and Dakota's, and it was like Morocco, like Brazil, Japan, like, and you guys were like naming flags along the bridge, and like, and it was just this it's just this like really heartfelt moment to me that like speaks to community. You were like running in, his race was like gone from like a competitive perspective, but he was still running it in, which is actually something I really admire about Dakota a lot. And there are some folks in our sport that do this too, where it's like Adam Peterman, etc. Like they will like finish that race if they can. Obviously, I'm not like advocating for people who are feeling injured to like finish a race on an injury, no, but from like if it's like the spirit has been defeated, but like he still stuck it out. Anyways, I just like will never forget this memory that you guys probably don't even know I witnessed. But it was like you both running on the bridge and like naming flags and kind of like laughing, but you were so encouraging of him. And I just think that like that really speaks to like the beauty of this community, truly, like of how we are all in whatever way, like I'll probably be the crew, maybe a pacer, but mostly a crew for the rest of my life. And I'm like kind of okay with that. You know, like we all kind of like can plug in different ways. And obviously I know there's like an entire other conversation to have about the inclusivity of the trail community and like feeling invited in. And that is something we've had on the trailhead, and we will probably continue to have more conversations around that. But anyways, I just wanted to share that memory because it really, it really makes me happy to remember that.
That was a very sweet, that was honestly a pretty fun time. But yeah, I agree. Like the community that I've had in the trail running community specifically has been really heartfelt for me, because I feel like it's been a space where, we are as people who are accessing more outdoor spaces, like in the quote wilderness, usually, is like we have a daily practice of being out in these places. And so I think it naturally fosters more conversations about like what is happening in these spaces, how do we contribute to what is happening in these spaces, and what do we think in terms of people's access, what like just what our overall impact is. And it's been a really cool place for me to also understand like how I want that spirit and those conversations to be happening elsewhere, like because I have these conversations all the time, obviously with my job as a scientist, because I am actively in environmental sciences on a day-to-day basis, but like the beauty that is also happening in these spaces that are technically like sport related, but are inherently like our existence as runners, as humans in general, is because of the environments that we live in and operate in on a daily basis. So of course we should be having more conversations about how we view these spaces and what we want to happen to these places. But I don't think that that's happening for everyone for various reasons. But yeah, so it's like been really nice to explore like how I fit in to this particular, to the trail running community, to the scientific community in my life just as a person, and how I want to view the world through conversations like that. And it's funny just talking about Dakota for a second, for that for that race was so sweet, because I know he flew up and was like really sad about that race, but he still did amazing. And he was so funny because like we were talking about environmental issues like pretty much the whole time. We're talking about mining impacts, and
this does not surprise me.
He was telling me all about mining impacts in southwestern Colorado and like his time growing up there and the work that he wants to do. And it was just so cool because I was like, wow, I mean, even like we're still going pretty fast and you're feeling really shitty, but you also still want to have a conversation with me about mining. Probably keep your mind off of how horrible you're feeling, but also like the fact that the conversation just immediately goes to this problem and like how we should fix it, or like how we should get more people involved in understanding this issue. It's just really awesome, and I just personally really appreciated it.
I love it. That like doesn't surprise me at all too. Like he's so like he's like, all right, I feel like I want to throw up, but like mining and I had my first conversation was with him on this podcast, and that's how I launched this. And it was a very fun time to realize that our brains also work quite similarly. So I feel like this makes sense that we're all like, oh yeah, a kindred spirit. Okay, so you, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to ask these questions because I've saved our catch-up questions on like text, etc., for this moment to be like, to talk about your most recent project. But before we get to that, I did want to ask, like so you've been in Quebec for the last couple months, 9 months, 8 months? 10 months, who knows? Since January.
8 to 9 months,
Okay. And then you're going to be heading somewhere new soon, which I don't know if you want to share that yet, but you can if you want. But I was just curious if you could talk about what your research is on right now, or like what you're working on right now. And then I did want to ask about how the project in July was, and maybe you can kind of set that up for us about what that was, but a two-part question.
So I've been living in a smaller town in Quebec. I got a research fellowship through the Quebec government to do research on an island out here called Anticosti Island, which is in the lower St. Lawrence estuary of the province of Quebec. And I got this fellowship because I applied for it, but I applied for it with I applied for it with a guy here, a professor who's at the University of Quebec at Rimouski, the town that I'm in. And we got connected because of previous postdoc work that I was doing before my time here, because I was using a model that he helped develop. And he reached out to, I reached out to him during my first postdoc, which was in Colorado. But it was like based on doing work in Alaska, looking at growth projections of different fish under different climate scenarios and what the implications are for Indigenous communities across Alaska and the Canadian Yukon, which is a whole other thing. But it was funny because I reached out to him with questions about this model because I was like, I'm new to modeling. I have no idea what I'm doing. Oh, so can you please help me figure out what these specific parameters mean and what I need to do here? And he did. And then it was like a year later, he reached out to me and was like, hey, I've been looking into this fellowship to do work on this island, and I have this idea, and I thought that you would be a person who would be really interested in this because you are a runner. I noticed because he found my personal website. He was like, you're a trail runner, you do long distance things, and you also are in a similar realm of research that I'm in. And I know that you know how to do this particular modeling now because we talked.
Because I taught you how to do it.
Because I taught you how to do it. So he was like, I'm curious if you'd be open to applying for this with me, and like we can talk through this project. And
this was like out of the blue.
You're
still in... Like, where were you at this point? You're in Boulder. Yeah,
I was in Boulder. And and at the time, it was funny because I was just like, I was feeling a little overwhelmed at the time because I was really excited about the work that we were doing in Alaska, but I just felt like I still felt like I was disconnected from the communities that we were working with because like physically disconnected. Like we're in Colorado, a lot of these communities are in Alaska. It's hard to maintain like deeper connections with people. We're working with a lot of communities. I was also just modeling, and my experience before that, like I'd done a lot more work out in the field and lab work. And I like really love being like out in the environments that I'm going to research and work on and try to understand, because being out there is the best way to really understand these systems. And so I was really struggling because I'm like, I am not a modeler. Like I can't do this for the rest of my career. And so I was actively trying to find other opportunities for myself to sort of combine a lot of the things that I love. And also at this time, I was questioning, again, constantly questioning what my relationship to running is. And I had also had sort of a dream to be able to combine the research that I was doing with running somehow. Yeah. Because I'd always get this question of like, well, you're studying oceans and you're studying aquatic systems, but you're a runner. So how does that make sense? And I'm like, it makes sense because I'm a human being and I find interest in all these things. So like, I don't need to be I don't need to just like only be a person in the water to love aquatic ecosystems and like want to continue to study them.
This is my favorite part about human nature, to put people in like, I don't want to say boxes, but like a thing that like makes sense to them, you know, and like nothing to the people that ask these questions. I'm sure I know when Claire, and maybe it was you first, like both were studying marine biology in Boulder. I was like, what? That's crazy. There's no ocean, you know, like, so I'm sure I did that too. But like, I just feel it's so funny to me when people are like, but you're like, it doesn't make sense in my brain. And it's like, well, I'm a human. So I like different things. And anyways.
Like I know it's not the same as being a climber and I'm like a geologist.
Right. So that one fits in a nice little package. Anyways, I just think it's always so funny. Okay, continue.
Side note. But So it was like at this perfect time because I was already considering like what I was going to do next and where I wanted to be, and I also was kind of like I need to do something for the plot. Like I need to just I need to just shake up my life a little bit.
Totally.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, sure, let's talk about it. And we had this conversation that was like so exciting to me because he was on a similar trajectory. Like he had just started getting into trail running, doing ultras, him and his partner, and he primarily studies brook trout, which are a native species here in Quebec. And like really trying to understand deeply brook trout physiology and like all of the differences between these populations and their life history patterns, what that means for brook trout fisheries and for brook trout conservation. And he wants to do this like whole database that of brook trout life history, and they're called ecotypes, but it's basically just like how they exist in the in the water. There are different ways of existing in the water, but he wants to create this big database, like this big global database. But yeah, he's really starting with trying to deeply understand what's going on across the province of Quebec. And so the framework for the original project idea was to run around Anticosti Island, the island here, to collect brook trout around the island, as well as water samples for trace metals, because there's this chemical analysis that you can do for fish ear bones, where you can also detect metals in the ear bones of the fish, and you can get a record of where the fish have lived throughout their lifespan.
Whoa.
So you can try to understand their like history patterns, their migration patterns through the lens of their ear bones, their otoliths. So that was the original idea.
Whoa.
And this particular island, it has it's very old. It's like over 400 million years old. So it has this really long geological record, specifically for marine species. And like the island's mostly been studied for its geology, but not really for its biology, ecology. And there's been a lot of disruption on the island because of human colonization and species introductions. So it's resulted in a lot of extinctions on the island, but it also houses a lot of brook trout as well as Atlantic salmon. And so that was this lens through which we were trying to set up the project, was like, we can use running to try to understand what's happening in these different watersheds around the island. And I was interested in doing that, one, because I love running.
Yes.
Because I love fish.
It's perfect.
And C, because it's a new place for me to try to understand and explore. But also because there's like so much more there that I was really excited to uncover. Because like before this, I had no idea really anything. Like I wasn't thinking about Quebec at all, or anything going on in this region. But especially coming from the work that I was doing with communities in Alaska, I immediately had a question of, okay, what are Indigenous communities' relations to this island? There have to be some, because it sits in the middle of this estuary. It's still pretty far from, like, if you look at the what am I trying to say? The geography of this area. Like words.
All good. I forget them all the time. Yeah.
So like the St. Lawrence estuary is huge. And you have a north shore and a south shore for the St. Lawrence River. So the river opens up, it's very wide, and the North Shore and South Shore are basically flanking this island, but the space in between, the water in between, is still a pretty far distance. But there is a ton of history of Indigenous community use of the island through hunting and fishing. So there's been this really long record of people using this island for resources, for living. A lot of Innu and Mi'kmaq communities around here. So I was immediately interested in trying to engage with people and like understand their intimate history with this place and what that means, especially under the backdrop of like all of these more recent changes to the island ecology and fish species there, because the fact that people had been fishing there for generations, for thousands of years before, really shows us, tells us a lot about the fish's use of the island itself. And a lot of that hasn't really been described fully in scientific literature or reports really at all. So like a lot of what we really know about the island in terms of fish population status is through like the past 30 years of records, 30 to 40 years of records. Because monitoring of fish populations there, like actual quantitative monitoring, didn't start happening until like the 1980s. So pretty recently. So really, like a lot of our understanding of the ecology, at least in the scientific literature, is really only from the past 40 years, which is kind of crazy. And then before that, like in the early 1800s, this place was bought and sold and colonized by French settlers, the province of Quebec, the government of Canada, even Russia. Like there's a really, and like Anglophone Canadian communities, like some people from Nova Scotia. Like there's a lot of interesting human history and use of this place. And so, we developed the project idea further, but the basis of the project was really rooted in using running to try to understand what has been happening on this island and what that means for its future conservation. Because it was in 2023, the island was nominated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of its Indigenous community importance, because of the cultural importance to Indigenous communities, also the cultural importance to the province of Quebec and this entangled history. And so currently the island is primarily used for like, I guess just alluding to the expedition in July for a second, like Brendan Davis, who is one of the people on the trip, he's also like doing a lot of the photography and videography for the trip, but he was like, this just feels like a camp like a playground for Canadians, because like, the island itself is like there are no more real like human predators on the island because of species extinction, like not many big threats in terms of like your physical safety, like we would think about bears, big animals like that. So there's not really that anymore. The island is mostly a hunting outfitter and then fishing. So it's really like a lot of the uses of this island is for recreation in a sense, and like a very specific kind of recreation. And it's like pretty expensive to hunt there, pretty expensive to fish there. So it's like very specific groups of people can access this place.
Interesting. Is that from like a permitting, like not just permitting, that's like the people that like the guides and stuff like that will take you?
So there are guides that they're seasonal guides that take people hunting and fishing. And it's sort of like the fishing all happens in the summer, and then hunting happens in the fall, and then winter, spring is mostly just, there's one small village on the island that's called Pulmini. And so that's like where obviously more people who live there year round will be, but it's not very big. It's like,
and I'm sure tourism. Wow. Yeah. And I'm sure tourism is probably the main, I would guess, the main like economic driver.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And so like a few years ago, the island, or the water surrounding the island was open for oil and gas exploration, and people didn't want that. So and like basically it was the province of Quebec, the government of Canada, trying to and like a lot of local support from people trying to figure out what is the best use of this place. It's like what is the lesser evil? And so there was this big push to not have the island open for oil and gas exploration because people didn't want that, saw it as environmentally dangerous. And so that's why the island was nominated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, because it's seen as culturally valuable, but also ecologically, environmentally valuable to this region. But it took a lot of like local community buy-in and support. And so the lesser evil of this is that the island has to remain a hunting and fishing output to be able to continue to, because of course under capitalism we have to utilize all these resources,
all the resources.
But there are other there are a lot of different views about
I'm sure
how hunting, because the species that are hunted on the island are mostly deer, but the deer are introduced. So the deer were introduced to the islands like I may get the timing wrong, but it was either in the 1800s or the 1900s. But they were introduced and they have flourished on this island, but completely decimated the vegetation on the island. And so they've taken out a lot of food sources for other native species that were there, leading to a lot of species extinction. And they weren't the only species that were introduced. There were like 12 other animals that people tried to introduce to the island, some to various success and others not. But so it's completely changed the ecology on this island. So what we came up with for this project was
I'm so curious to hear the premise. Well, also, and was your professor going to run with you? Like, was your professor part of this? Okay, cool.
Yeah, he really wanted, so like, I think a big goal for a lot of, I will say this, for a lot of academic biologists specifically, is to just like try to fund work that you would want to do, like try to fund work that just like gets you outside as much as possible, gets you doing the thing that you want to do the most.
I love it. Hey, it worked. This is great.
So he was like, this would be great because like I love trail running and I want to keep trail running and I want to try fast packing. So it was a fast packing project and I also want to fish. I was like, I also want to do these things. I'm not perfect. I also want to learn new skills that I think are relevant for me, for my like career trajectory, and also actively help conservation goals and community interests. So we decided to do this project of using running to travel around the island, because it's also the lowest footprint on the island as possible. There aren't too many roads, but you can access most of the rivers because most of the rivers drain out to the ocean on the island. And we were primarily interested in sampling the rivers. So we would use running to sample all of these rivers around the island, and sample the rivers for fish as well as water, collecting trace metals, but also environmental DNA. So we want to use environmental DNA as a measure of the biodiversity of these rivers, because environmental DNA is just genetic material that's shed by a bunch of organisms that are present in that particular ecosystem. So we want to use that as a proxy for biodiversity, so we can compare biodiversity across all these watersheds if it's different in systems that are known to have a lot of salmon and brook trout compared to those that are not. Is that a reason why these fish are here, or is it another reason? Or another question is, do these fish facilitate more biodiverse ecosystems because of the nutrients that they bring in, because they're inherently connected to these systems? So we can use that information from the environmental DNA, from the trace metals, from the ear bones, to really get this holistic picture of how fish are useful for these ecosystems, how these ecosystems may be changing, the way fish are utilizing these habitats. And we can do this around most of the island, and also use this as a way to help, or use this as a way to get other people involved in the work as well. So we also turned this into like a community science project. So this summer was like the first big expedition. So we are hoping to do more iterations of this, because the Quebec government has a federal agency called the Ministry of Forest, Fauna and Parks. And they're in charge of a lot of the ecosystem monitoring that goes on in a lot of Quebec national parks, and like public lands. And they have this goal to do regular biodiversity surveys on the island as part of the UNESCO nomination. And so we're hoping that this field expedition could be a regular practice around the island, a faster way to do these biodiversity surveys, as well as a way to get more people in the recreation communities involved and interested in helping sample. It would be really amazing.
So cool.
Yeah. Like, that is the ultimate goal. So
that's the goal.
We could help with those biodiversity monitoring and like track. So we could use this year as a baseline to track the restoration process of a lot of these watersheds. But yeah, so this expedition, we technically did a pilot version last year, but it was pretty short. Okay. It was like only a few days, and we were really just testing our sampling protocols. But it was a fun way to just like see the island a little bit and get to know some of the landscape. But this year was really the first year that I was able to see a lot more of the island, and like really lead a full team of people and figure out all the logistics. And
you had like no time to do this too, because I think you were like, wasn't it sort of funding approved May, and you were like getting, I'm sure you had other funding. I'm sure you had other funding too, but I just was like, I remember we talked on the phone and I was like, oh man, we're trying to fill a whole trip of people.
Yeah, it's because I had funding through Patagonia to support bringing a few runners onto the trip with me, so that we could have two different running teams. Right. But we already had funding through my fellowship to do the more like community components. So putting together community workshops and putting together sampling kits and fishing kits, and all of that to distribute. But like doing the actual expedition and having more people with me, because that was our big goal, is to be able to sample around the island, doing using a couple of running teams as well. So the way it worked, like it did work out in the end, but I didn't get full knowledge that I had the funding until May, and we left. We needed to start at the end of June for this project. So like trying to find people who are interested in doing 10 days of backpacking and walking through water basically for like 12 hours a day. And sampling. Like it was a very cool experience, but like finding people that would be interested in specifically this.
I mean, and willing to take time. I was I feel like the running amount was like one of the things. And then I also was like going to take that crazy flight from Tahoe or Reno. Remember that flight pattern to get on the ferry? And I was like, I really want to do this. But I think even if the flights had worked out, Ryan was very helpful in reminding me. He's like, you can't run this much right now. Like, I know you want to do this, but wait. So how did it, like, did you fill the teams? Yes. Like, how did it go?
So filled the teams. I was really grateful. I got support through some friends in Colorado. Because since like most people in Colorado are doing something outdoorsy for a really long time. I was like, okay, this is a pretty solid community of people that I could probably rely on to find someone. So yeah, I eventually through several networks got connected with these two women that were able to join like pretty last minute. Like I talked to them at the beginning of June, and within 2 weeks they had like flights booked and the ferry booked and everything ready.
Hell
to go.
Yeah.
That was
my gosh.
Yeah, I was like, thank you.
This is
amazing, because I was really stressed out. I was like, okay, the plan may just have to be that we only have one running team and we only get one part of the island sampled, and you know what, that's okay too. But it was really great that they were able to join and we could put this together, because I was like really excited about having this little running team, being able to teach people who definitely don't consider themselves scientists how to do the type of sampling that we were doing, getting to explore a place that's pretty new to all of us. Like, yes, I had been to this island once before, but this was really my first time fully getting to experience it. So it was really awesome being able to do that and have people around to do it with. But yeah, it all worked out. So but the logistical planning was a lot. Like
it seemed a lot.
Was not okay as a human being.
I know. I was like worried about you. Actually, I was like, man, I feel like Peyton's really in it right now, like trying to get this trip off the ground. But you did it.
Yeah, it worked out with the help of a lot of people. So I'm really grateful for everyone that helped me.
That's so cool.
Together.
And we can maybe see it on, like, is Brendan going to put something together? Maybe Patagonia releasing something?
Yeah, so
I don't know.
So I'm writing a journal story for the Patagonia stories. So I just finished writing that, and that will come out in the spring about the project. And then Brendan has a bunch of video footage, so I think there is the possibility for like a short video, just about the process, which will be really cool. And then my advisor and I are putting together a piece for there's this magazine called Quebec Science, where we're talking more about like the low footprint side of it, and in terms of carbon emissions and why we did the expedition this way versus, driving or taking a boat to all these different rivers around the island. So yeah, there will be several opportunities to see where the story lies.
Goes. Yeah.
But yeah, it worked out really well, and I think it was just a really eye-opening experience for me to see, like, because I was really doubting myself though. Like, I'm like, is running really necessary to do all of this? And like, why am I even doing this? Like, especially in the moment, I was just like, this is pretty hard, and a pretty big feat to do in general, just like as an expedition, because we did, for my team, we did over 270 kilometers, and it ended up being like 8 or 9 days. We ended a day early. But it was like the sampling process, depending on what body of water we're sampling, how big it is. Just like, sorry, I'm going back to some of the rivers that we sampled were huge, because we're like, basically when you're sampling, you're trying not to get into the water, and most of the rivers that we sampled, like, there's some pretty big rivers, but the river mouths are usually pretty traversable, especially at low tide. So it's pretty easy to like get in without needing to get your full self wet and like swept away. But there were some big rivers that we hit at like high tide towards the end of the day, and the tide's like going out super fast, and we have our like packs on the back, and then we also have our sampling packs on the front, which are like fly fishing packs, and we have like fly fishing rods, and we just have like all our stuff. And we're checking if we can even cross these rivers. Like there's this one river that was so funny called Rivière de la Chaloupe, and it was huge. And we were like, okay, we're coming up with a game plan. And we were like, okay, we're going to put all of our valuable electronics in this dry bag. We're going to hold our packs above our heads. We're going to like tread water across this. Like,
no. Oh my God, this is stressful.
Because we had to get to the other side to continue along our route. And when I was scoping out these rivers, because I did a lot of route checking through Gaia and Google Earth, some satellite imagery, and it's like really hard to tell how deep some rivers are going to be. How deep?
Oh my gosh!
And so I was like, we're here. This is what we're doing. So yeah, it was really funny, just like trying to troubleshoot those things in the moment, and also still like keep our gear together because it like wasn't super hot, but it wasn't really cold. But yeah, just like trying to keep yourself physically healthy, mentally
sane,
and also and
stable.
And like also doing the sampling process correctly and keeping things sterile. Like, working with DNA, you can contaminate things pretty easily. So it was like a lot of things that you have to think about in the moment. So there were definitely moments to be had. Like there was this other river that we got to. It was actually at the end of the day that we had to cross the river before. That was really big. The moral of the story for that river that we first had to cross, that was huge. We had Brendan swim across the river, and it was freezing cold because there was like this little chalet, this little cabin at the river mouth, and we were like, oh, that's funny. And he saw a canoe on the other side of the riverbank, and so we were like, okay, if we can go across and get this canoe, bring it back, we could bring all our stuff to the other side, and like everyone stays dry besides Brendan. And then we can go and we can sample and do all that. So we sent him across, and the first canoe that we found was horrible. Like it was definitely not usable, probably would have sunk in the moment. But then he just like went inside this cabin, which like the two women that we were with were Shirley and Kelly. But yeah, we were like, we would not have the audacity to just like openly walk into some random cabin. Or like, I don't know, in the US you get shot.
Definitely.
But literally someone told us on the island that like it's a mandate in some parts of Canada to like keep places like this open for visitors and like people traveling.
Wow, that's so different.
And I was like, wow, like this is like, so nice. Like, when you say that Canadians are nice, it's real. It's very real.
Yeah, that's what it is. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, he found another canoe inside the cabin. That was really fortunate for us.
So, oh my gosh. So then you were all able to get across. Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. So that river ended up being fine. And then we got to like our last river for the night for that same day. We were going to sample it in the morning, but it was huge. It was bigger than the first river that we tried to cross. This time there was no cabin and no canoe. So we were like, okay,
oh my gosh,
how are we going to do this? It's also like very, very heavily saltwater influenced. Like there's a lagoon that was connected to it that was really big. So, and you could like see all these seals playing around. So like, this is definitely very salty. So we were just like, okay, we're just going to camp on this beach and see if we can wait until the tide goes down the next morning. Like we'll see what happens. And we ended up camping on the beach, but we were having a really hard time finding fresh water. So we ended up just drinking salt water that night, and it was like really demoralizing.
Oh my gosh.
We tried
Jeez.
to find fresh water, but it was going to be really far, like going all around this lagoon and bushwhacking and still needing to go very far upstream because the water level was so high and the current was really strong. So yeah, we're like, okay,
jeez.
So we'll see what happens in the morning. And then in the morning, it was funny because we woke up to like this really intense thunderstorm and there was lightning and everything. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm like, oh gosh, like it's gonna mess with our timing. What are we gonna do? Will we even be able to get across this river still? I don't know.
Yeah.
But it worked out. But in the morning, it was funny because like in a time where it was like when the rain had stopped. We all got out of our tents and we were able to drink some rainwater that had collected.
I was wondering if you collected it.
Yeah, like the night before I put out my camping pot and collected some rainwater in my pot from the night. And then Brendan, because he was sleeping in a bivvy, which was like really, like I've been there. I used it the year before for the fast packing trip that we did, and I was like, no thank you, because we experienced quite a bit of rain last year, and I was like, I have to have a tent. I can't do a bivvy. Brendan learned the hard way.
Oh my god.
He had like a liter of water just like sitting on his bivvy, so we split his bivvy water between the four of us. To get through until we could get to more fresh water, and like getting through that site was fine because the tide was lower, so we were able to actually pass through the river without like getting swept away and all the things. Oh
my god!
So yeah, it was a really funny,
wild.
Yeah, it was a really
wild.
Troubleshooting.
I mean, I'm so glad to hear that it went well. Like, it feels like you were, I know you were like, it was like a stressful thing beforehand to like put it together. But at the same time, I feel like you were able to make it happen and pull it off, which is fucking awesome. And I hope I hope you guys do something with the footage. That would be really, really fun.
Yeah, I hope so too. And like he did little interviews with us afterwards.
Yeah,
like, I'm pretty sure there's gonna be something.
I love it. I hope there is. I mean, and it's really cool that Patagonia like came on board too. I'm just looking at our time and realizing we're so over. Well, no, but I mean, like, thank you for. Do you have time for? If I have like one wrap up question, I'm gonna ask, or unless you have to go.
I think I have time.
Just go. Okay, well, a quick one. I didn't mean to say just go. You can do whatever you want. Well, no, I ask everyone this to wrap, and I do this in the specific way because like we've just spent ostensibly an hour or much more in this case talking about like what you work on. So, but my question to guests is, what's your favorite climate solution that's not your own? So in this case, like you can take that however you want, because we could broaden it out to be like, that's not science or whatever, but also specifically like, the tracking that you do, the sampling, the like the kind of biological research and ecology that you've been involved in for so long. But yeah, like what is sort of a climate solution that's out there that you're like, oh, that's so cool. Like I want more people to know about this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can point out just one in particular, but I think just like a lot of the climate solutions that I find really inspiring and exciting are honestly related to giving land and water back to Indigenous communities so that people actually have autonomy and control over what actually happens to these places. So like broadly as a climate solution, that is the best thing possible. In my mind. And I've seen case studies of that through the work that I've done in aquatic ecosystems, but you also hear and see it all the time with a lot of communities like in the West Coast, even in places in Africa and South America, of like fire mitigation and all of these ways to regulate fire prevention in different places by actually doing different types of burning ceremonies and things like that. But even and related to aquatic ecosystems. I think this is something, it's unrelated to the work that I've done in Alaska or here in Quebec, but it was something that I was like, it was just so nice to hear and have a glimpse of what was happening for communities down in Chile. So last year I went to go to Chile just for like a month or a month and a half,
Cool.
just to learn this technique of analyzing the fish ear bones for this project that I'm doing now. But yeah, in that process, the professor I was working with, I asked him if we could speak with maybe someone from a local indigenous community about the particular fish that we were working on, which is a native fish in the area. And it's called the robalo. And the guy that we spoke with, his role, so he's part of the Mapuche community, Mapuche indigenous tribe, local to this island outside of Puerto Montt called Isla Tenglo. And his role is like the chief. So his formal title is the lonco. So he's like the chief, the main communicator. He is the one who interacts with more outside people to say like what's going on in his community. And it was funny because we were talking about this fish, and the guy I was working with, he was like, we don't know where these fish are spawning, this particular fish, and so like we want to figure that out as a scientific community. And then the lonco, his name is Herberto, and he was just like, well, we know where they spawn. Like they're spawning right here. We have these fish pens here where we corral the spawning fish and we help them raise their eggs. Like we help provide husbandry. And you have examples of that in other places as well, not just with the Robalo and Mapuche people from this particular island, but also people in like the Canadian Yukon. So like in the Karkos-Tagish Nation, they have this traditional practice of being able to like help create more suitable environments for salmon eggs, for salmon that are spawning up there. But in this particular system in the Yukon, they haven't been having Chinook salmon come all the way back up the Yukon to their original spawning sites. Like a lot of those really far inland populations have declined quite a bit. And so because of that, like people haven't been able to continue this practice. But there are people in the community that want to start doing that again, because some salmon are starting to come back up. Some communities are talking about creating hatchery raised fish that they could do this more traditional practice of helping protect these eggs to help them at least start their life on a good note. And there's like, I think there's so much we can learn from these practices that are just like not told at all on a global scale. And it's like, we talk like, especially in what I was doing in Alaska, like there's so many stories about salmon decline and fish decline and impacts to people's livelihoods and their cultural practices and just their ways of living. And it's like, it's just crazy to see how all of that is so intertwined. And I think like so much of the conversation around climate really only focuses on like the economics versus like these really human stories. And in those human stories of our connections to place are where the solutions are. And it's just like ingrained in people that have been there for generations, for thousands of years. And like we have it too with people that are maybe not from the places where we originally came from, but like we have that in us too, to be able to like cultivate this deeper understanding of the places that we're in. And like we could have climate solutions too within our own daily practice as well, which I think is really awesome. And maybe goes back to like how running is a daily practice for me and makes me feel like I have a more intimate connection with place. And what could that look like for me for a local climate solution that I could develop through running, things like that. But yeah, I just find all of these like practices that that people have. Like we already have the knowledge for what we should be doing. It's just like actually listening to people that like know these systems intimately and doing those practices. So yeah, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, I love it. Oh my gosh, this was such a good way to end. And Peyton, thank you so much for your time. It's also been so great to catch up with you just as friends, to like hear how the trip went and see how you're doing. And I hope we get to run into each other at some point soon, whether that's in Colorado, where I know you'll be soon, but also at an event or something like that. But it was so good to chat, and thank you for all your time.
Thank you. Yeah, it was really fun. We should definitely connect again soon.